So I walk in, I turn on the light, I come over, and who's waiting for me on my computer?
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Mr.
How the
Dewey
heck are
Freeman.
you?
I'm really good. It is end of April. April showers bring May flowers. We had a surprise
Right
rainstorm in the middle of our mega drought. Oh my gosh.
Nice.
Yeah. So that was nice. I'm Mark Sylvester. We're the Elder Council. And today, through a few conversations I had this week, I've been waiting to talk to you about estrangement and what that kind of like help define it, but also how to deal with it in life, whether it's estranged from a family member, estranged from a 30-year friend, or estranged from your kids. I have a feeling that everybody listening to the show has a dotted line to that topic. And with your permission, I thought we'd start by, when I say estrangement, what I hope that's not a trigger for you.
I may need therapy after this, Mark. Do you know any good therapists?
Let me Google some.
What are you asking what that means for me?
Yeah. So when I say that the thing I love about our show is that I can lob something out there, a little word bomb, and it lands inside your skull and a bunch of things blow up from that. So tell me about one of them.
Got it. Well, thank you for that. The first thing that comes to mind is an unresolved conflict in which people are unwilling to look at. And the next thing that comes to mind is the use of estrangement to punish. Many times when I hear about it, what I hear about people saying is, oh, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to connect with this or that person. I want to set a boundary. And for the audience, I know that there are times that we do need to do that if there's abuse or something like that. And in my experience, the largest or the way that I see it happen the most is not in that, but it's a conflict that somebody is unwilling to step into and address. And so there's a place where it's like, I'm just going to leave. And unfortunately, part of what I see is I see that there's a huge societal thing around cutting people off.
Oh, tell me more about that.
Well, part of all cultures or all society have sort of, and we've talked about this, spoken, unspoken.
Yeah, the rules. Yep.
Yeah, rules. But there's something about where it's like, if you want to be powerful, you just cut so-and-so out of your life. It's like they don't deserve it. And I mean, we're seeing that a lot. And generally, there's like a huge lack of conversation.
Hold it. Is this related to cancel culture?
Well, I'm not 100% sure how to define cancel culture. And the little bit where I really can connect in, yeah, it's like, instead of stepping in and going, wow, dude, you know, whatever happened, and please, everyone know I'm making this up. Whatever happened, let's figure it the fuck out. Instead of doing that, there's a piece that is out there where it's just like, well, go fuck yourself.
No, fuck you. Oh,
yeah,
fuck
that.
you.
Yeah.
right? And so now that's the conflict you just talked about,
Right.
that you an unresolved conflict that's avoided. So and you happen to be in a situation where you're not forced to be together like a job
Right.
or whatever. It's so you're and then that distance grows further and further and further, and whatever that never gets resolved. So the tissue around that irresolution just gets thicker and thicker and thicker. And finally, 20 years later, you're going, hey, what happened to the best friend of my life?
Hmm. Yeah. And there seems to be some sense of what I would call pseudo power in that, where it's like, if I go, 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 go. I just saw it in
You
your eyes.
you hit it, because we've talked about the difference between power and control, right?
Hmm.
Right, power and control, and or yeah, and the fact that I can withhold something from you is a control issue, right?
Right.
Got it, got it. Control bad, power good.
Yes. And
Sometimes I get them mixed up, but
well, and I will admit that those are my definitions. And
it's your show.
yeah, it's my show. Actually, at the men's initiation that we did last week in Austin, someone asked me where a certain thing came from, and I said, well, I make shit up, and you can call it whatever you want to call it, but that's my shit that I made up. So it
By
makes
the
some
way, a
sense.
little sidebar. Here's an elder tip. You can make shit up. You can make shit up. B, when you do, be very specific and be very certain, and that thing which you just made up becomes gospel.
Exactly. And
It
make it
was
up.
89.7. It was 89.7. Come on. So I be very specific, and I'm very certain. And it's been my experience in any kind of conversation between two people, the person who is most certain will prevail.
Okay, that's an interesting twist. How does that, from your perspective, fit into estrangement?
So okay, sure. So the wounded party, the person who feels wounded, is telling them a story about how they're a victim of the other person,
Mm-hmm.
and they are very specific about, this is how you fucking wounded me, the words that hurt or the action that severed this deep bond we had between us. That's a story I'm telling myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that to be true, and I'm very specific about that, and I'm going to use that. The control part of that is I'm going to control access from and withhold access to me or a loved one in my care. For instance, the kids, it's ex-wife, and would withhold access to the kids. You didn't do anything to the kids, but I know you like the kids, so I'm going to withhold access.
I'm going to punish you. So
I'm going to punish you.
In the scenario you're talking about, we set up a triangle.
Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah. Did I get that right, Doc?
You got it right. And here's, wow, this is, you talk about like things explode in my mind.
It's my job.
That is
I'm a provocateur.
What I have found with myself, and what I have seen in situations where somebody is making something up and is very specific about it, and then they create an estrangement process and avoid working on the conflict, is it's when I have seen people say, I'm not going to talk to you more. I'm going to withhold the kids. I'm not going to no, I don't want you to come to my event. All of those things, that kinds of things, is that we make something up about why,
Mm-hmm.
but our story, there's some place inside of us that we know that it's not true, or that it's only partially true. And it's much easier to create an estranged relationship than it is to come in and find out the truth,
Mm,
or
mm,
than it
mm,
is to come in and actually own that you've just made something up that's
mm-hmm,
false.
mm-hmm.
And I've seen this with couples a lot where,
I can
yeah, go.
been there, done that.
Yeah,
A lot. Yeah, a lot. Had, long periods, didn't see my son, long periods, didn't see my daughter. Um, and I know specifically it was as a result of conflict,
right.
and stories, because they'll say, well, you did, no, it was he said, she said, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
so I think we've set the table. We can all, I love the two pieces. One, there is an unresolved conflict in one of the parties that the party will go to great lengths to avoid dealing with, up to and including completely shutting off that aspect, no matter how important or vital that was.
Right.
Children, case in point, deep brother and sister who says, don't ever call me again.
Right.
So they will, in the most important relationships in their lives, they cut it. And that frequently it's used to punish the other person.
You bet. I'm going to punish you instead of deal with the conflict.
So I'm on board with all of that. It's a really succinct way to look at it, and I think if we were all to sit down and write down who is estranged in our life, hopefully there's no names on your list when you do this, but there might be one or two that are and there might be one or two that you don't even know about, that you've like, God, whatever happened to Bobby? Whatever
Right.
happened to, we used to see him all the time. And there may have been some slight at a dinner party or some perceived wrong. And Bobby says, fuck that guy. And you just, life goes on, and funny, he goes, God, we see him all the time. What happened? And you reach out, and you know, that door's closed.
Right. You
So
get ghosted. Go ahead.
so with the table set now, and we have one of those things in our lives, how do we, and it's important to us to resolve that conflict, because I think that's a piece, which is like, I need to resolve this for whatever that reason is. I either need to or I want to resolve this. What's the opening gambit to the, do we call it the estrangor and the estrangee?
I mean, what's the first
Probably
step
not
in that?
words. Yeah. What,
Yeah.
how do you, because I have examples where, 30 emails and texts, and it's like, dude, you are a ghost right now. You're being ghosted, which would be the current parlance for that. But
Right.
you know what I'm saying? What in your experience will, do a callback, will create an opening to start rebuilding that relationship?
I think, well, one, there are situations that you can create 45 openings and someone will not step into them.
Okay.
So we do need to know that. Many times what we will do is create an opening and just say, hey, can we talk, for instance, and that doesn't lead us anywhere.
Because they're in full avoid mode.
Well, they're in full avoid mode, and in that that's not a full opening.
Oh.
A full opening to me would look something like, Mark, I've missed you. So there's a creation of vulnerability. I've missed you. And is a big word, which we've talked about repeatedly. So I'm just going to re-emphasize that. And I'm aware of the mistakes that I have made in blank, our relationship, or I'm aware of the mistake I made at the last time we saw each other. Of fully owning the responsibility that I have as part of what will create an opening, of a level of vulnerability and an ownership of my own whatever. It doesn't mean, because many times what people would do is, let's say, well, I'll apologize if you apologize. Well, and the other person goes, well, you apologize first. Well, no, I mean, then that just creates more mess. With two statements of a statement of what you feel. I missed you. Don't start off, just as a hint, don't start off with, you hurt me.
Right.
You hurt me and I want you to apologize. That will never work. It's like, I've missed our connection. And then an ownership of your part in it, because there's always your part in it.
Always.
And a lot of the
so excuse me, on that part where, so I agree that, so what if you've racked your brain and you can't figure out what you did wrong? How did I fuck up? So and I get the atonement, like atonement is such, like we do a whole show on atonement. We will, I'll make a note of that.
Yeah,
we'll do a show on that. But what you're suggesting is there's a spirit of atonement, whatever that looks like. Am I right?
Absolutely.
Even if it may be that I'm not sure what I did. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and that's a way to say it. Another way to say it is, I'm aware that I did something that caused, or at least partially caused, our disconnect. I'm not fully sure what that is, and I really would like to know. Because there's a difference between just going, I'm not sure what I did, and someone go, well, and it depends on what happens on either end. I'm not sure what I did. I have some ideas, and I'd really like to know. So every piece that we're doing is creating it. That's like 3 or 4 little openings in that. And if we're really working with that, is there probably some statement needs to be made in there of, and I really want to resolve this conflict.
That's the button on the end of that.
Yeah, that's the button on the end of it. Because now here's the gig. That still may not work. That'll increase your chances big time, but that still may not work. And if that doesn't work, then what you can know is that you created an opening, you stepped in, you did what you needed to do, you were honest, you were clear, and then you can let it sit for a while.
And I'm gonna guess, I mean, there's so many examples of this. Part of me wants to, you got to know when to let go.
Mhm.
And I can see letting go of a friendship that was at one time in life very, very meaningful, and it no longer is. And you've done this, and you're not going to, okay, cut bait, let that go.
Mhm.
I think that's different with blood relatives.
Yes, I would agree with that.
And so if plan A doesn't work, do you just let it, or do you let A sit for a little while and not be that pestering? Hey, did you get my note? Did you get my note? Did you get my note?
Mhm. Mhm.
What's plan B?
Well, here's with everything with this, there's an underlying systemic structure. What I see mostly in families where kids get estranged from one or the other parent by after a divorce, or
Yeah.
um, there will be a divorce and things will be pretty good, and one of the people in the couple gets remarried. Those kinds of things, is that there, for estrangement to take place, there always has to be a triangle.
Oh,
And I think that we've talked about this in previous shows, is the triangle of what is perceived as perpetrator, victim, and rescuer.
oh, got it.
And um, should I go into that just really
Yeah.
briefly?
I drew, you know me. Come
I
on.
didn't know you. Perfect.
Got it.
Perfect. And where, and this is a very simplistic way to put this. If anyone wants
We're
to
all
read about it,
simplistic reptilian people. And
yeah,
if you
there
could
you
just
go.
tell me something in 3 so I can remember it. And if
Right.
it's alliterative, it's going to be even easier. So keep going, Doc.
Right. So whoever is the perceived perpetrator and the victim, the perpetrator does something to the victim. And then the rescuer is over here. The rescuer comes in to rescue the victim. As soon as the rescuer rescues the victim, they become the perpetrator to the perpetrator. So then the triangle shifts. So then there's the rescuer becomes the perpetrator. The person or being or part of the triangle that was the perpetrator becomes a victim. Then whoever was the victim has to come in and rescue the new victim. And it
Who
just
is the
keeps,
original perpetrator?
exactly. And it
Wow,
just,
that's a triangle you want to break up pretty quick.
that's a triangle you want to break up really quick. So
Jeez.
the total made up example, a couple,
Be very specific and be very certain with your made up example.
well, everyone knows this is made up. So couples together, one of the people in the couple has an affair. They end up getting a divorce. The person that has the affair is still with the same person that they had the affair with. There are kids involved. So the person that didn't have the affair, to punish the person that had the affair, tries to estrange the kids from the parent, the other parent. And they do that by using the person who had the affair. Well, your dad or your mom are bad people because they went out and fucked somebody else. That, and then that just goes on and on and on and on. And then that, and again, what is the underlying piece is that there was initially, there was no desire to or willingness to resolve whatever conflict there was between the couple, the initial couple. Otherwise, they wouldn't have gone and had an affair. And so most of estrangement, this is wrapping back around, comes from the lack of willingness and or sometimes the ability to resolve conflict. And so the resolution of conflict comes through the process of estrangement.
So continuing with that example, the kids in some instances try to be the rescuers.
Right. And the kid rescues. And a lot of times what happens is, let's say there's more than one child, one will rescue one parent, one will rescue the other parent. And then it gets even more crazy, because for every additional person there is in, in a system, there become more and more triangles. Like
Right.
when there are three,
Yeah.
there's one triangle. When you add a fourth person in, you actually end up with a possibility of 16 triangles. When you have five people, like say 2 kids, mom, dad, and a person who ever had the affair, that's 5 people, there's a possibility of 25 triangles. And it just gets so messy that that's where we go, this is unsolvable. We don't want to deal with the conflict, so we will create estrangement.
Got
it. And
so it feels like there's two outcomes. One outcome is in a wonderful world, you create an opening that occurs at the exact right time for the person to receive it. Right, their heart is opened for some reason, some other reason you're unaware of, and they're feeling okay. Yeah, there was a bunch of stuff, and in this idealized situation, they see your attempt at atonement and say, well, yeah, I probably had a little bit to do with that too. And so now they're, and they may have been, the kids may say, when are we going to see daddy? When are we going to see daddy? There may be some of that in there, and they're like, okay. And you go have a coffee and you hug it out, as as we say, right? They kind of hug it out, and you that opening gets created. Now we're building the new post conflict relationship, which is new bricks in that wall, very slowly and very tenderly building the new relationship.
Well, that and as a huge part of that, and what a big part that people don't bring into conflict resolution is, and I love your example of 2 parents going, yeah, we need to work this out. A huge part of what does not happen in working on the conflict resolution is a concept of forgiveness, both of forgiveness of ourselves for having just blown whatever we've blown, and or forgiveness of the other person. Many times we will say, in trying to resolve a conflict, we will say, I'm sorry, or I apologize. It's very rare that people will say, I blew X, Y, and Z. Will you forgive me for that?
Which is, and we talked about that distinction earlier in an earlier show, but take us for a minute along that, the difference, because we spent an hour talking about how to genuinely ask for forgiveness.
Yeah, and you're asking me to sort of walk through that a little bit,
just real quickly, because it was the asking. Just remind people it's the asking the other person.
You bet. It's like, if I say I'm sorry, that doesn't usually cut it. And many of us have gone to our partners, to our friends, and we say, I'm sorry. And they go, yeah, okay. And we go, well, why aren't you accepting my apology? And if you really want to drop in, the way to do it is, if you're going to use the word sorrow, is to say, I feel sorrow in my heart, or I'm really struggling with this, and the level of sorrow I feel is very deep. And then the next question or the next statement is, will you forgive me for the mistakes I made?
Is it will you or can you?
I say will.
Okay. Right.
Because my underlying belief is, and this is just my own value system, nobody else in the world has to buy this. I believe that we're capable of pretty much anything.
I'm
I
with you.
believe, and I
So
mean,
in your point, so you can, so
no,
now it's a choice. Will you?
right. And even, I mean, one of the things that you bring to all of these shows is your level of optimism. You have said that over and over and over, is that you look at the world from a half full, not a half empty kind of place. And that's clearly been my experience with you. And that's if we can hold that, it's like, yeah, I can do that. I can, yeah, I can do that. And then the question is, will you do that or not?
So in
And
our scenario where we have an idealized outcome, which is we both come to it. I'm imagining it's like this prisoner exchange where you're both very very tentative and like your hands on your pistol because you don't
right,
know what's going to happen, and you're like I'm ready. And were they genuinely wanting to all of this stuff, or am I being baited into a trap? I'm imagining all of that shit
right, all those
going on,
kinds of
right?
things.
All
Yeah,
that stuff.
that goes on.
So, but in this idealized outcome, you both figure out you had a role. You're both vulnerable and open. You're both asking for forgiveness of the other, and you hug it out. Now, you may have gone relationship wise to a part where you can't come back together, but you can at least have figured that out. And now the estrangement ends, and whatever that means. So, my hope for people is that's the outcome that happens, and that it's on you to play your role in that, as we have just described.
Absolutely.
What happens in the I can see where this thing could go wrong at any step along the way. How do you take the no? How do you integrate the no into your life and not have I mean, I can think of times where like, no, that's irreparable. There are times it is like either you did something that was like there is no forgiveness from that thing. How do you get over that one? Is it just time?
Yeah. Let me, you ask questions that have 40,000 answers. So let me give the first three. One is, and this popped up when we were talking about the will or can.
Yeah.
I actually believe if I said to somebody, can you forgive me? To me, that's disrespectful, because I'm questioning whether or not they can. I'm questioning
I
their
see that.
ability.
Yeah.
Versus saying, will you forgive me? Which is, I'm respecting the other person enough to believe that they have that ability.
Yeah.
I do think that there are situations going both ways. I've experienced it both ways, where it's like, yeah, I did something that even if someone forgives me, we're not going to go anywhere with it. And vice versa. It's like, I'm done. And I hold two things. One is that when I have done my very best to repair and provided the opening to do that, that holds a level of satisfaction for me. That holds a level of honesty and authenticity.
You did the work.
I did the work. The rest is, then I do believe it becomes a grieving process of, yeah, I did the work and I know I did. And now I've lost that relationship.
And so you're going to grieve as you would with any loss.
As I would with any loss. But we've cleaned up the underlying part.
Yeah.
So that we can actually allow ourselves to grieve.
Oh, I feel like analogy man today. So there's a wound.
Yes.
And when it's dirty and it's messy, and it's, it's gonna get all scabbed and pussy and infected. At the worst case, you lose your arm. Okay. Or to your point, yes, it's still a wound. The wound never goes away, but I've cleaned the wound and now it's going to heal cleanly. I will always have the scar from that wound, but it no longer causes me pain. Did I get up? Did I put that together?
That could not be more beautiful.
Right.
And we may walk with that scar and we still can go and live our lives.
I think it is that collection of scars that you and I have on our psyches that give us permission to do this show.
That would be 1,000% true. Our psyches and our bodies.
I went with body, but I haven't actually gotten hurt.
Okay, well,
I come close.
Okay, well, I've gotten hurt enough for both of us, so I've just told that piece.
There you go. I had fruit and vegetables thrown at me across the kitchen in a cafeteria I worked at. The ex walked in, "You son of a bitch." And there was the produce had just been dropped off, and she reached in and probably grabbed a hard avocado and hurled it across the kitchen at me. And I barely ducked, and everybody in the kitchen goes, "What the fit?" This 7 a.m. Yeah, that happened.
Maybe we need to name this show Duck Avocados. Avocado Aikido.
What's the one takeaway? So if someone, let's give somebody some action. If there is an open wound right now, we stay with that metaphor for a while. There's an open wound that has caused an estrangement in their life. What would you encourage them to do right after this episode?
I love your analogy of cleaning the wound. And I would say 2 things. One is look at your part. Find the courage and bravery to face conflict. Don't be afraid to fight hurt. And get help. Get somebody to stand to get your back while you're dealing with what you need to deal with. This whole piece is some of these losses and estrangements are huge. And we need help. We need our brothers to step in and get our backs.
Well, I know you have my back and I have your back.
You bet.
And with that, I thank you so much. I hope this episode helps somebody. If it just helps one person, that will be epic.
One person. So
thank you.
Thank you, sir.